And thank you for joining the Nonprofit Learning Lab for today's workshop. And without further ado, I will now hand it over to you, Matt.
Actually, I'm going to start out. I'm Carolyn.
Yeah.
I want to welcome everyone into this webinar for Nonprofit Learning Labs, how to use AI tools safely at nonprofits. We're from Community IT. So if you don't know the difference between using a public tool like ChatGPT and logging on to a more private enterprise tool at your organization like Copilot or Gemini if you use Google Workspace, this is the webinar that's going to help you clarify that. We hear a lot about make sure not to share your sensitive data with AI learning models, but how do you know how to use them safely? How do you check on the terms and conditions? Where do you begin? Today, our cybersecurity expert, Matt Eshleman, is going to demystify enterprise AI and share some tips on how to create an organizational AI policy and how to share your knowledge and do staff training so your colleagues are also using AI in the most secure way possible. My name is Carolyn Woodard. I am the Outreach Director for Community IT, and I'll be the moderator today. I'm going to help Matt, but first I'm going to go over our learning objectives. So by the end of the session today, we hope that you will learn the difference between enterprise or subscription AI and freemium public AI tools. We're going to go over accessing Microsoft Copilot and Google Workspace Gemini AI tools at the organizational level. And we're going to review IT AI policy guidelines, providing some training and knowledge sharing tips. And if you're looking for more information on AI topics, Community IT just started a midweek nonprofit AI podcast where we give you 10 to 15 minutes of news and resources weekly. If you subscribe to our regular podcast, you'll get that in your feed along with our Friday podcast on lots of different topics. We have different speakers who come on and chat. We also do our webinar kind of updates also through that podcast. We also have other recorded webinars on our website, which you can access. There's no paywall. They're free resources. It's at communityit.com. We cover things like creating an ethical AI framework for your organization, AI governance. We did an amazing webinar last summer with Brenda Foster on ethical issues and also how to do good prompting. We have a downloadable AI acceptable use policy template that you can use also. So there's a lot of ethical questions you can talk about with AI, but today we wanted to focus on this particular question that we get a lot, which is how do you know if you're using AI tools safely? And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, great. Thanks for the introduction, Carolyn, and looking forward to talking about this topic with everyone today. My name is Matt Eshleman, and I'm the Chief Technology Officer here at Community IT. And I've been here at Community IT for over 20 years, and I've gotten to work with hundreds of nonprofit organizations on their technology strategy, cybersecurity, and now this kind of current topic of AI, which we've really been working at intently over the last 3 or so years. So I'm looking forward to talking and having this conversation today and answering the questions that come up.
And before we begin, if you're not familiar with Community IT, I wanted to introduce ourselves. We are a 100% employee-owned managed services provider. We provide outsourced IT support. We work exclusively with nonprofit organizations, and our mission is to help nonprofits accomplish their missions through the effective use of technology. We are big fans of what well-managed IT can do for your nonprofit. We serve nonprofits across the United States. We've been doing this for 25 years. It's our 25th year anniversary. We are technology experts and are consistently given a MSP 501 recognition for being a top MSP, which is an honor we received again in 2025. We believe we're the only MSP on this list that is serving nonprofits exclusively. I want to remind everyone that for these presentations, Community IT is always vendor agnostic. We only make recommendations to our clients only based on their specific business needs, and we never try to get a client into a product because we get a benefit or incentive from that. But we do consider ourselves a best of breed IT provider. So it's our job to know the landscape, what tools are available, reputable, and widely used, and we make our recommendations on that basis for our clients based on their business needs, priorities, and budget. We are going to talk today about the two big players, Microsoft Copilot and Gemini for Google Workspace, which are tool stacks that a lot of nonprofits are using. But that's why we're going to talk about it, because a lot of places are already using them. We are going to leave a lot of time as we can for Q&A, so you can submit your questions through the Q&A tab, which you should see in your GoToWebinar kind of panel there. So if I can see them, I will break in and ask them, but we'll try to get to them. If we can't get to everything, you can join us and our experts on our community in Reddit. We're at r/nonprofit IT management. We have a thread already running there on how to use AI tools safely at nonprofits. So if you have more questions, you can ask them there and our experts will help answer them. A little bit more about us. Our mission, as I said, is to create value for the nonprofit sector through well-managed IT. We also identify 4 key values as employee owners that define our company: trust, knowledge, service, and balance. We seek always to treat people with respect and fairness, to empower our staff, clients, and sector to understand and use technology effectively, to be helpful with our talents, and we recognize that the health of our communities is vital to our well-being, and that work is only part of our lives. All right, so we're going to start out with a poll, which if you can launch the poll, we wanted to know your comfort level with AI tools already. So the answers could be 1 is completely uncomfortable or unfamiliar with most tools. 2 is somewhat uncomfortable, use a few popular tools occasionally. 3 is that neutral, neither uncomfortable or comfortable, kind of average use. 4 is somewhat comfortable, use a few AI tools daily. And 5 would be completely comfortable. I use a lot of tools a lot of the time. My colleagues are always asking me to teach them how. So those are your options. We're kind of trying to get a gauge on the people that are joining us in this webinar and what your comfort level is with AI tools. So all the way from 1, which is completely uncomfortable, don't worry, you've come to the right place, all the way up to 5, completely comfortable, and we're glad that you're here. We'd love to help share, some of your ideas and insights too. So,
Votes going. Okay, we have about 81% of folks voting, and we have 9% completely uncomfortable. We have 29%, about 29-30% of somewhat uncomfortable. We have 20% at neither uncomfortable, and then 36% at somewhat comfortable using a few AI tools daily, and then finally 4% completely comfortable.
that tracks. All right, well, thank you everyone so much for filling out that poll. That really helps us. And Matt, what would you say? Does that sound pretty familiar?
Yeah, I think it does in terms of, kind of people on the ends, right? Most people are using some tools, right? I mean, that's certainly what we see whenever we're, supporting our clients. And, I think we see that move to the middle, right? I think we'll probably see that shift up to getting folks more comfortable with the use of those tools over time.
Yeah. Matt, would you talk a little bit about freemium AI? Because this was a term I hadn't heard until recently, and you had a great explanation of it.
Yeah, so I think, AI is maybe not unlike many other cloud service tools that we've kind of seen in the marketplace, in that they have, largely adopted a freemium pricing or business model, and that they're giving it away first in hopes of gaining kind of market share and user-based engagement, and then converting people to paying customers over time. So we'll see that in kind of the next slide, and just kind of how fast some of that adoption has occurred. But again, that's the business model, right? It's largely driven by free. People love free. It makes it the barrier to entry very low, and encourages folks to start with adoption. A lot of these AI tools are trained or kind of have been developed using kind of publicly available content that was either legitimately or perhaps gained through kind of surreptitious methods. But again, they're like these large language models have been developed using kind of the full corpus of the internet to inform what they know. And kind of they're also gaining knowledge by just the prompts and the interactions that people have and are uploading itself. So again, so those freemium models typically don't have very clear or maybe well understood terms and conditions, just in terms of how the data that you put into the system as part of your regular interaction are used. And so, in the organizational or kind of the business context, those questions become a lot more important. So, whether you maybe got started because, ChatGPT was like this really fantastic tool and everybody else was using it, that maybe offers a different use case than, using it in your organization context with accessing some sensitive data there. And as we can see here, the adoption and use of these tools is just phenomenal. So I think this is specifically talking about ChatGPT. I think it was like at the time the fastest growth, of users of kind of any cloud service. I mean, it went from, it was launched in they say, kind of January here, right? But to get up to, what is now, well over 800 million weekly active users is just a phenomenal trajectory. And I think it shows how appealing and enticing, these AI tools can be, because, it's just so much more interactive and detailed than than what we were seeing with maybe other cloud services. So again, the use of these tools has been very rapid, very widespread, and we see that across all sorts of different organizations.
And then when we say enterprise AI, I know a lot of nonprofits might not think of themselves as an enterprise. So what does that mean?
Yeah, so I think this is an important distinction, and the enterprise aspect really goes to the kind of how your data is protected and governed. So is where the kind of the free ChatGPT model, you're kind of interacting with it, the prompts that you're giving it, the responses, and that interaction is all kind of returned back into the model. These quote unquote enterprise AI tools will at least offer a much more robust or protected engagement, right? So for example, in Copilot for Microsoft, that's a common one, right? So if you're accessing Copilot using your Microsoft account, that immediately adds a level of protection so that the questions you're asking, the data that you're providing it, is now protected by Microsoft's enterprise agreement, as opposed to kind of a consumer agreement where those controls are not as strong. The same thing with Gemini, right? So there are different terms of use for organizations that are receiving those AI services through a enterprise agreement versus kind of the free model, or maybe even the consumer model. We've also seen that there are many different AI solutions out there, including solutions like Change Agent, which is built by and for nonprofits, that actually has very clear terms of use and very clear definitions about how your data is used and how they go about their work. So again, it's helpful to see those different examples whenever you're looking at the terms and conditions for these cloud services, to understand just exactly, how is your data used, in what context is that provided, what are the protections that are in place. And so in any case, I think it's really important for individuals that are making those decisions around how they're using technology tools to be attentive to the terms and conditions, and take that extra step to say, oh, I really do need to protect my data that I'm interacting with, and kind of protect it through these agreements, as opposed to using the free tool that may be stuck in your bookmark from whenever you signed up for it back in 2023.
And I think we're going to talk a little bit about it later on when we talk about policies, but that's another kind of layer. So you may have some information or documents at your organization that your policy is against sharing that publicly. So if you uploaded it to a freemium AI tool, you'd be going against the policy. So that's another layer to keep in mind. But Matt, I think you were going to talk a little bit more about, recently we've been hearing more about this kind of continuum of AI tools, from the assistive, which may be what a lot of us are familiar with, through this kind of medium workflow assistance, and then all the way over to the agentic generative AI tools. So can you explain that a little bit more to us? Because people may be hearing these different phrases and not totally know what they mean.
Yeah, I think, there's been tremendous innovation in the AI, kind of area over the last number of years. And so while we first started off with, assistive AI, right? Go to ChatGPT, type in a prompt, get a response back. Hey, maybe that, gave you some better insight. Maybe it reworded an email, right? That was a really helpful tool. And I think still how most of us are engaging with AI tools right now. We're now seeing AI built into workflow, right? So maybe there's a smart process or an AI, service built into your workflow tool. So we, we provide a lot of IT services to nonprofits. So there's some tools in our workflow, right, that maybe help summarize tickets or provide suggested responses, right? So that's an example where now there's an AI process built into the workflow. And then that moves all the way up into, agentic, right? That's the new buzzword where you have these kind of autonomous agents that are maybe able to interact, respond to questions, solve problems, right? In a much more, maybe there are some boundaries, but you're also giving those agentic processes some rules to say, yes, you can answer these questions, or maybe don't answer these questions, or escalate here. And so it does also present some different use cases and some licensing models as well that organizations need to be aware of. But all this to say, right? So there is not just kind of one AI solution out there. We can interact with AI tools in a variety of different ways, from the kind of Copilot, sidekick, to built into the tools that we use, to even having the AI tools do some work on our behalf.
Thank you, because I find that very, very confusing as well. And especially now that everyone's talking about agents, like, oh, make this AI agent that will do this thing. So understanding that continuum is helpful. So our next question is, what do you pay? So it's not, I thought that it was just, it's either free or it's enterprise, but it turns out that there's some layers in between as well, different models and different monthly plans that you can pay. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so at the end of the day, right, these are kind of new inventive services that businesses are creating as part of whatever our capitalist marketplace. And so at the these are all leading to incenting people to pay for the features and benefits that they get. So in most cases, right, there's a free entry tier as a way to get people engaged. And so if you are in an organization, right, that uses Microsoft for your email and productivity tools, or if you use Google for your Microsoft and productivity tools, if you sign in with your kind of Office credentials, you can access kind of a free protected tier of Copilot or Gemini to do those things, right? Like ask some questions, get some, you're looking for a product evaluation, you need some help reviewing some emails, right? Those kinds of things you can do typically in the free tier, where you're copying and pasting content into a chat window, or maybe uploading some files into a chat window and getting a response. Moving up from there, what most organizations are doing would be paying for some kind of escalated or improved level of service that now taps into maybe your work files, your SharePoint, for example. And so instead of copying and pasting an email into Copilot and saying, hey, can you rewrite this? Now you're able to actually access Copilot directly from Outlook and say, draft a response to these messages, or look through my previous week of email and identify any things that I haven't responded to yet and draft a response, right? So those kinds of tools are available, in the kind of $20 to $30 per user per month range. Again, could be used to analyze that business data, access files, that kind of thing. And then at the upper tier on that kind of per user license model, which ends up being a few $100s a month, are really the tools that are designed for, as you see here, right? You can do some agent development, maybe you're coding. I think that has really been demonstrated as an area where these AI tools really excel, along with video generation. So again, the creation of videos and kind of that interactive content, again, much more complicated, much more resource intensive, and so the vendors are pricing that accordingly.
And you could buy that kind of a license for one person at your organization, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Again, I think in addition to the innovations in the services, like there's been innovation in pricing as well. And so again, whenever Copilot was originally released, I think you had to commit to, I don't know, 100 user licenses, right? But that has really dropped. And so now you can buy one license. You still have to commit for a year at Microsoft, at least. So again, it's not a enormous amount of money, but you're making a $350 commitment to that license. But again, you only have to buy one. So again, only really buy what you need when you need it, and you can be flexible in how those licenses are even assigned, right? So Community IT, we still don't have licenses for everybody, but we have kind of a pool, and some people are like, hey, like I used it, it's kind of, I've reached the end of what I feel like I've been able to get out of it, and they can turn their license in, and that can be reallocated to somebody else. So again, that's a really helpful benefit right now, particularly as we're all learning to see how these tools can be applied and used in our day-to-day work.
I have one more question, which I know all nonprofits are going to be interested in. Are there nonprofit discounts for the AI tools? I know, like, if you have Microsoft licenses, you can get those discounted nonprofit licenses through TechSoup. So what about the AI licenses?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so again, this area is rapidly evolving, and the answer that I'll give now is probably not the answer that will be relevant, in June or July. But for right now, Microsoft doesn't really provide much discounting for their Copilot licensing. Again, it's about $30 a seat. I think there is the expectation that there will be a kind of a small business or a business premium version of Copilot that will be available for, again, organizations that are under 300 staff, which, again, most of our clients are. We have seen vendors like Claude actually do have a nonprofit donation program. And so again, their licenses are discounted more significantly. And again, Google, again, I think doesn't have the same, discounting programs. So again, I think price is certainly one aspect of it. I would encourage folks to evaluate and experiment and see what is the tool that works best for them. And, there's probably reasons to make this investment, outside of the actual direct cost in terms of its overall effectiveness. But no, right, the pricing is really changing rapidly, and just keep checking to see what the most current discount and donation programs may be for nonprofit organizations.
Yeah, I think unfortunately a lot of the things we're going to say today, you do have to do some research. And the research, as Matt said, might change. Like next month, they may announce a new discount program. So just put aside some time every week to stay on top of it. But Matt, you get what you pay for, correct? So if someone in this webinar is going to go back maybe to their boss or their CFO and make a case for using the enterprise versions, the paid versions, can you give them some help in making that case?
Yeah, I think it is really important to be intentional, and I think we are. I'm encouraged by the nonprofit sector and their intentionality and kind of deliberative, right? I mean, organizations are typically providing direct service, or they're engaging with individuals, right? And there is a really strong commitment to the security and protection of the data that they're entrusted with. And so I think that care has really carried through to the use of AI tools. And so it is important to be deliberate in terms of how you're doing that adoption. It is good that you don't have to, you don't have to buy AI tools for everybody in your organization all at once. And so having an AI working group, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, can be helpful. And so you can just license that group. Again, test, iterate, read the terms and conditions, know what you're getting into so that you can be clear with the people in your organization and your staff. How are these tools going to be used? What data are we intending to provide to it? What data safeguards are we putting in place? And how can we ensure that the vendors that we're using are going to honor those? So again, it is important to read the terms and conditions. It is important to go through and review the settings of the AI tools even after you've implemented them to, again, change things like how long are they retaining that chat history? How, who has access to the reporting about what tools have been in use or what prompts have been entered. So again, just buying a license is of an enterprise tool is not necessarily the final step, but again, it's an important process overall to make sure that you're have an understanding of how your data is used and how what the long tail may be for things that are put into the platform.
And we're, as I said, we're going to talk a little bit more about policy and writing your policy or updating your policy later in the webinar. So that can also help you make the case that your cybersecurity is important, your data is very valuable, and also just that it's valuable to have all of your staff using the tools in a similar way, just for your management and for sharing knowledge as well. And then Matt, you wanted to talk a little bit about the elephant in the room.
Yeah, like I think as much as people are being careful and cautious and intentional about kind of thinking about the use of AI kind of at the organizational level, the reality is that many staff are already using generative AI tools as part of their work today. And in addition, your staff are already interacting with other organizations' generative AI tools, right? So I think it is important to kind of go into that process kind of eyes wide open and understand, like, just because like you haven't had an organizational discussion and checked off something official about we are using AI, the cat's out of the bag. Folks are already using those tools already, and this word cloud is a good example. So this comes from a client of ours, typical, 50-person nonprofit organization. And so this comes from a web security tool that we have, right, that gives us the ability to block malicious sites, but also have some application governance in terms of what things are used or approved. And we can see, right, in addition to the big name players of Google Gemini and Microsoft 365 Copilot, there's a lot of other tools on here that, I don't know, don't sound familiar to me, but are demonstrative of what their staff are interacting with or maybe using themselves, right? So we have, maybe there's Anthropic there in the middle, there's the Perplexity, which are kind of some of the other LLMs that are popular, but then there's also tools like Otter AI, which I know has some kind of negative connotations in terms of maybe not their AI policy, but how they operate as a company and kind of seem to worm themselves into everybody's meeting, whether you want them to or not. And again, a lot of these tools, as I was researching, are maybe not tools that the organization is using for their own work product, but other vendors are using, right? There's, almost 100% certainty if you're interacting with a chat agent on some web support site, right? That is not being staffed by a real person, but by an AI entity, an agent that the vendor is using. And so again, it is kind of all pervasive in terms of how widespread the use of these tools are. And so being intentional about how we're using them and maybe how we choose to interact with them is a conversation worth having.
And so we wanted to get into those two big tech tools of Microsoft's Copilot and Gemini for Google Workspace. So Matt, you're going to talk a little bit about Microsoft Copilot and this question of how do you know if you're using it through an enterprise login or account, or if you're using it just kind of out in the wild.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is kind of, I think, some helpful graphics. And again, if you're, obviously you're on a computer, you can pop open a window and follow along. And so again, if you're a Microsoft customer, again, if you're in Microsoft 365 and you go to copilot.microsoft.com, you may see what looks like the window on the right, which is, hey, which Copilot experience are you looking for? Are you looking for a work experience or personal, right? And so you can see my little identity there. So if I clicked on to that, I would be taken into the enterprise protected version of Copilot, where my interactions and the content are all protected by those data protection rules. And then we see on the left, which is just kind of regular Microsoft Copilot, where I don't have that choice, right? So it's just an open prompt. And so I know in that context that the things that I type and the responses I get and the files that I upload, right, those are all going to be used to improve Microsoft's model over time. And so that data is now kind of going to be part of their learning model moving forward. So, so again, if you are a Microsoft customer, you already have this protected chat available. And so again, that's a great place to go. So if you were using ChatGPT and you just had the free plan, or you just signed up, right? This is a great switch to make to ensure that you're just protecting your web search, your interaction out of the box. So that would be something that you can do right away. Now the next version we have up here is what it looks like for a Copilot license. So again, now we're moving, I've signed in, and now I have a Copilot license. And so in addition to the web search, which I can, query and, interact with, I also have a work tab, which means if I click on the work tab, now all of a sudden, instead of asking questions about the broader world at large, I'm asking questions specifically about my organizational data. So now I can ask questions like, give me a summary of all of the files that Carolyn has worked on that I have access to. And so I can start asking questions like that, because now Copilot has access, as my assistant, and has access to everything that I do as a user in the environment. And so it can help generate that content. Again, if you see some of the things down there in my recent history, right? So create FAQ. So I create a work themes and collaboration document, right? So that was something I was working on as a reviewing 2025. I've got some planning documents for my centralized services team, right? So I could lift out themes and get summaries from documents that I've worked on. But the key part, right, is that little green checkbox, right? The enterprise data protection applies to this chat. So again, Microsoft is providing some of those additional guardrails and assurances that this information is going to be protected and not shared into the broader context.
And then I wanted to jump in and say that if you, either of those versions, if you're using your enterprise license, or if you're logged in to Microsoft at work, Microsoft has 20 different ways to do the same thing. So if you open a Word document, you're going to see that Copilot icon in the upper right. So you can click on that and it will open a chat, and you could go ahead and prompt it like, I need to write this email, or I need to write this document, and it can help you with that. And you'll see that enterprise data protection applies to this chat. You can also, in Excel, same thing, in PowerPoint, same thing. You'll see that Copilot icon. If you haven't clicked on it yet, next time you're in one of those tools in Microsoft, just go ahead and click on it, and you can play around with it and see what it can do when you're logged into your work account. So it's very, very helpful. It's right there. Of course, they're trying to get you to use it. And then we're going to move on to Google Workspace. So a lot of nonprofits use Google Workspace. It's a little bit more confusing for me because the Gemini is the freemium version and the enterprise version. They're both called Gemini. But so again, you can access this through your company account. And you want to make sure you're logged into your Google Work profile. If you're like me, you might have multiple profiles, multiple personas for different, Gmail accounts that you have or other accounts that you have. So make sure you're logged into the right one before you're using Gemini for work. And then Matt, you were going to talk a little bit about Notebook LM.
Yeah. So again, as Carolyn mentioned, right, we have the kind of the regular Gemini. You can ask questions, right, get some feedback, review documents and content, and then Notebook LM is one of a tool, or I don't know, a feature of the Google Gemini model, and it's a really handy resource that you can use to kind of, instead of ask general questions, right, you can create a curated set of resources for it to kind of review and do research. So again, this might be helpful for organizations that are doing policy work, and you want to visit 10 different websites and provide it 15 different white papers from resources that you've worked with, and then you can create ongoing queries and interactions with that kind of body of work. And so instead of just opening up your search to the world and Gemini kind of bringing back the things that it thinks are most relevant, you can actually provide that set of information to the tool to really perform pretty thorough and kind of deep analysis on the resources that you are providing to it. So again, that's one of the nice features that's in the Google Gemini kind of AI environment.
Yeah, just phenomenally useful. I've heard lots of use cases about this. Like you could upload all of your, annual reports for as far back as you have annual reports, and then you can ask Gemini questions about them. You can, if you do casework, you can upload those things. It's like creating this walled off library those are the resources that the Gemini is going to go find answers from. So even if you just have, vetted frequently asked questions that your organization deals with in the sector that you deal with, you could put that in there, and then the Gemini is only going to return you information that is been vetted by your organization already. So it's really, really powerful. Urge you to explore it. Again, as I said, well, as for Microsoft, there are different ways to get it for Google. So making sure you're logged in to your work profile, and then you'll see you can open up that, the little menu that has the apps. You'll see Gemini is there. You can also bookmark it. You can have Gemini there. And then once you log in, it will look something like this in your workplace. You can see that you're logged into your work account. You can access the various tools so there's where you see where you're logged into your work account. You can access various tools. You can create and save gems, which is a kind of persistent helper where you can tell it something about what you want it to do, and then every time you come back to it, that gem will do the same thing. So for example, I'm in marketing, I can tell it, I want to write this email newsletter in this type of a way, and then every time I come back, it can help me with that. You can change how it answers under this menu here. Right now it's called Fast. And here's what the menu looks like once you click on Fast. So it's got different levels of how much it thinks about something. And then there's another tool menu here, which has, this is where you can find deep research and guided learning models. Again, it'll depend on what pro version of Gemini Workplace you have at the enterprise level. I'm sure this slide will be out of date fairly quickly because they're introducing new tools all the time, new menus for those tools, but this should be a way to get started if you haven't clicked on these different menus yet. All right, so now we're going to take a big turn and we talked about how to access these tools and why it's important to be in the enterprise, a paid version. But now we're going to do our second poll, which is about your nonprofit and do you have AI policies? So the first, if we can get the poll going, the first answer is I don't think so, which I want to say if you say no, we don't have a policy, go ahead and click on 1. I don't think so, because it's probably, if you don't know, you probably don't have one. And the second option is we are in the process of creating policies. And again, there's no shame for either one of these. If you don't know, if you don't think you have one, that's fine. Lots of people are in that boat. If you're in the process, that's great. You've taken a couple steps, but you're not quite finished. You're in the process. That's great. 3 is the answer, yes, our organization has created an AI acceptable use policy and our staff understand our policies. So a little combo there. So you may fall on either side of that. Yes, we've created a policy, but maybe the staff don't. We're not sure that all the staff are using it all the time. And then the fourth option is it's not applicable. But make sure if your answer is no, go ahead and click number 1. I don't think so, or no should be what that is.
Yeah, so it seems like we are at 43% responded I don't know, and 47% responded that they are in the process of creating policies. And the other 6% we have policies and know how to use them, and then we're at 5% with not applicable or other.
All right. I think that kind of tracks too. You've come to the right place. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to get started on creating nonprofit AI policies. I shared a link, the link from the last slide, and so that can be shared in the chat with you. We have a template on our website that's free. You can download it to get started with your own. It's unfortunately not something that you can just, I mean, you can Google it, you can find policies out there, but it's something that's going to be very individualized to your organization. So we are recommending strongly now that even if you don't have the time or ability to prioritize having a full length AI use policy right now, even just having a one-page outline of your principles and your philosophy is better than nothing. So go ahead and start those conversations, put down, bullet points or, like agenda items of what do you think your AI policy should cover? What are the sorts of things that your organization does? You might want to do a survey with your people to find out, like Matt showed us that word cloud of what tools are they already using, that sort of thing, so you can get an idea on it. But yeah, you want to get started. The best time to start is yesterday. The second best time is today. AI impacts are a leadership and a board level conversation, and those decisions should be reaching up to that level. Because every nonprofit working today is working in a sector that will be impacted by AI. Every community we care about will be impacted if you're working in education, healthcare, workforce development, environment, human rights, immigrant rights, any of the places and the types of policies and the communities that we work with. AI is it's very, very disruptive. It's gonna upend all of those sectors. So that makes it something you need to be having these conversations and decisions with at that top level. But it's also something that all staff can and should be involved in, weighing the options, learning the dangers, strategizing tasks to try with AI. And really, we know that at nonprofits, there's a lot of understanding throughout the organization of what your mission is. And you may find that all of the staff have opinions. They have ideas of how they can use AI to do something better. They have fears about how AI is, they don't want to be using it. So making sure you're having those staff-wide conversations is really important as you're moving forward with this. Again, you're going to think about ethics and impacts. And again, that's something where your staff and your leadership are going to have good ideas to start with. There are frameworks out there. We did a webinar on AI ethical framework that you can use for yourself to think about it. Another thing to really think about is to take training and upskilling really seriously. Over the next year, 2 years, this is going to be a real focus that you're going to need to put some time and priority into, because as we're talking about, all of these tools have a lot of productivity gains, and so you don't want to leave anyone in your staff behind. You're going to find that you have early adopters, you're going to find you have late adopters. And so you want to make sure that you're doing training that's meeting people where they are. Someone mentioned it to me the other day. It's very similar to, you think about when people were moving from taking notes in shorthand to using word processors. It's not something that you can just put them in front of it and have it work. You need to do training. So make sure you're thinking about that throughout your organization. And then revisit this often, because as we've been talking about, AI is evolving really quickly, and the training might be different a week from now. It's definitely not something that you can have your staff sit down and see a video once a year. We're going to use AI, this tool, this way. That's just not going to be functional. So how to get started on training? It's evolving so rapidly. Your training programs do need to be iterative to keep up. There is a really good document that I'm going to share with you in the chat that was put out by the Department of Labor on AI literacy and suggestions on training. I found it's just 3 or 4 pages long. It's got 5 different categories for AI literacy. It's got 7 different suggestions for how to do training to address these different categories. You're going to need to know this. You're going to need to help your staff come along with this. You can do a survey. You can, have your staff help you get started on what they want to learn. What tools do they want to learn? Do they want to learn prompting? Do they want to learn how to make an agent to do something for them that's just repetitive and they don't need to be doing it themselves? So it's just, again, something to be taking very seriously. Again, you can identify your power users. You're going to have early adopters. Maybe some of you here are early adopters. You want to be able to prioritize their time to share their knowledge and skills. You don't want to punish them for being good at something and just say, oh, in your, after hours, can you train your colleagues to do this better? So make sure if you're asking them to spend 15 minutes a week doing a training or helping their colleagues, that you're helping take something 15 minutes off of their plate. Now you may, if they're a power user, they may be finding those efficiencies and they may have a little extra time because they already built an agent that does something that they need to have done. So, make sure that you're prioritizing that throughout your organization and you're not expecting staff to just, do this training to each other without any kind of anything else taken off their plate. And then again, revisit your training program frequently, get feedback on what's working. You've got these great staff. They've been with you for a while in a lot of nonprofits. So make sure that you're using their feedback and their opinions. They know what during their day is just a total time suck. So, be working with them to try and put these tools in place, build these things that you want to have happen automatically or semi-automatically. And I just urge you to think about it. You have a lot of knowledge throughout your organization. So it's going to take everyone to tackle this issue at your organization. So make sure you also have an environment where people are free to tell you what they don't know enough about, what they're afraid of, what they're worried about as it might impact the work of your nonprofit or themselves personally. Again, you don't want to punish someone for saying, oh, I'm not good at prompting. You want them to come to you and say that, and then build that into a training that you're doing so they can get better at it, so they can take advantage of these productivity tools too. So I think we're gonna, Matt, you were gonna talk a little bit more about kind of wrap up what we talked about today about how to use AI tools safely.
Yeah, I think, Carolyn, thanks for going through all of that. I think how to get started with policies and then talking about training, right? I think it is so important to be intentional about the use and engagement of these tools. And also, as you kind of started, like, even if you don't have the time and energy to like go do like a full-blown AI policy, just get together, create that one-page working sheet, right? Is it, hey, like, we love technology, we love everything AI, we're gonna be all in on this? Or maybe your organization's like, hey, like, we're not sure, like, we have these concerns and reservations and we work with a sense of data, and so we're gonna be intentional about saying no, and we're gonna get to it maybe down the road. And so, with that in mind, I think it is important, to kind of talk about what does AI mean at your organization, and specifically, what is the problem you're trying to solve? I am kind of struck now, we're seeing, these grants come like, hey, like, tell us about how you're gonna, use AI to solve a problem with your organization. Maybe that's a little bit more effective than, a number of years ago, I remember like, hey, like, tell us how you're gonna use blockchain, right, to solve a problem with your organization, right? When the issue may not be we need this AI tool or we need to implement this thing, right? Maybe you just need a database, or maybe you need to define the process or workflow at your organization to streamline efficiencies. And maybe you don't need to implement an AI tool to address those fundamental challenges. Maybe AI is going to be part of the solution, and that's potentially true. But I think really having a good understanding of like, what is the problem we're trying to solve, and then what do we need to solve it? Technology might be part, people might be part, process is part of that. So again, when you have AI, right, you're just kind of looking for things to apply AI to. I do think it's helpful, right, to establish a team or working group, right, to really kind of figure things out. And that goes beyond just having some brainstorming, but actually having intentional time to kind of get together, be provided with some licenses, have some use cases, try to figure out, hey, what are the things that are we can really take advantage of, and that can make our organization more effective. You know, we're certainly seeing, you know, AI be used to shrink staffing. You know, these big software development companies, right? They're finding it a lot cheaper to kind of replace people with tools. But I think in the nonprofit sector, I mean, everybody's already doing 5 different things, and so you know, maybe AI can help you know, reduce the backlog or really get to the meaningful work that you need to do, and automate some of those kind of routine or tedious tasks that you know, occupy a lot of time. And again, you know, understand, you know, I think it's important, you know, if you have that group that's working on some of those tools, yeah, take that survey, figure out what are people already using. You know, talk to your IT partners, right? They may have some resources that can help shed light on what are the tools that people are already using, to help, you know, provide that feedback loop to say, oh, well, people are already finding this tool helpful, or they really have a need to do video creation, and so how can we support that? And then I would also say, you know, use the enterprise tools you already have, right? That's maybe the biggest takeaway that I'd hope that folks have today is like, you know, switch to copilot.microsoft.com, sign in with your org account, protect those conversations already, right? So you can take pretty easy steps to, you know, make meaningful improvements in your overall protection of org data just by making that simple change. And then it's important, right? Keep talking, keep iterating. You know, AI is one of those things where it is just moving at such a rapid clip. We've been talking about AI for several years. I feel like, you know, with some of the new models that were introduced kind of at the end of the year, like the capability and what is possible through these tools has really just skyrocketed and really grabbed people's attention. And so, you know, this is going to be a very I don't know, exciting journey, right? But it is a journey, right? It's not this destination. We're always going to, you know, be learning and iterating, and it's important to kind of keep that in mind because, you know, the landscape is kind of ever changing.
Yeah, I wanted to mention to everyone that's all the attendees on the webinar right now, if you have questions, we're going to have a minute or two to take questions. So go ahead and put them in the questions tab if you can see that. Matt, I wanted to ask you a question that goes back to this bullet point on reviewing permissions, because that is something that we've been having come in a little bit, which is questions about, now that I have AI search, is it going to find something that should have been private or in a more restricted folder, but somehow the AI search can find it? So do you have ideas on how you get started on reviewing those permissions?
Yeah, I think that is a good question. And again, maybe a good prerequisite, right? Even if you're not sure that you want to implement AI at your organization, as organizations have moved data into the cloud, I think a lot of nonprofit organizations operate on a very trusting model, and they operate, you know, kind of on, you know, we're going to let everybody have access to everything, maybe except we're going to block a couple of things. In the Copilot world, right, it means that each person, their Copilot, can kind of see whatever they have permission to. And the AI maybe isn't encumbered by what a user would be if they're like looking around to find something, and right, and so Copilot will find anything that its kind of assigned user has permission to, and so that could include find me all the salary information for my colleagues at this organization. If that's something that maybe was just kind of hidden away in a folder that maybe wasn't obvious if you were just poking around, you know, some of those barriers just really dissolve because the AI tool, you know, is kind of able to index and kind of understand and see everything. So a good prerequisite step is always to, yeah, start with those permissions. Look at our file, our folder, our site structure. Who actually has to have access to this to do their work, as opposed to we're just going to let it open and we're only going to block people that don't need to see it, right? So it's a little bit of a different mindset, but it is an important step to take to really improve the security and integrity of the data that you're providing the tool access to.
Yeah, and I would say that if this is something that you're concerned about, or leadership, you're in leadership at your nonprofit and this is a concern, take it seriously, because you may find that actually your file structure is pretty good and you have pretty good permissions, and there's only a couple of things. It may be that it's a training question, well, again, of you have just staff that are sharing and storing files in SharePoint or in Google Drive in completely different ways because they were never really, it wasn't part of their onboarding, and so they just did it the way that they got used to doing it, and they're using that, you know, share with all with this link, and that might not be what you want them to be doing. So there are ways to go through your database and your files and your folders to see where that is happening. But if that's a concern that you have, I would say don't wait. It may seem like a big project. Once you start looking into it, it may not be a huge project, but go ahead and get started looking into it, because as Matt showed, all of your staff are using AI to do all kinds of different things. And they, if they're using it in your enterprise, the Copilot or the Gemini, they're going to find files that they have access to. So have a look at that. Matt, I do not see any questions coming in. Are there any questions?
Yeah, so we actually have a couple questions come in. The first one is asking, I think I'm struggling most with the ethics of AI use going against problems that our mission is trying to solve, and how to harness it in a way that draws any benefit from an AI. Are there any more ethical AI companies, ways that can be used ethically?
Yeah, you want to take that? You want me to jump in?
Like I said, I think it's okay to not use AI, right? Like, I think that is one thing, I think that is worth saying out loud, to say, hey, as an organization, you can decide not to do something. I do think, that, I don't know, in the modern world, I think it's really hard to kind of be halfway into a technology. And I think, you being intentional or not, about not using AI because it's, using water or electricity or something, is a small drop in terms of what the huge scale of these AI systems are doing. I mean, the analogy, right? Like, we're all like concerned about recycling and throwing away, or not using a straw, and Taylor Swift, flies her jet, 3 miles across town to go grocery shopping, right? So I think the effective way that we can help shape some of the use of AI is probably through advocacy and legislation, and kind of on the local, regional, federal level. I think that probably has a bigger impact in the overall impact of AI than us choosing to use it or not. There are, I'm primarily a technologist, and I am not an ethicist, and I think there's people who are probably better equipped to have those conversations, and those resources are out there. Again, I still think that the use of AI at an organization is probably far more transformational and beneficial than maybe some of the negative impacts associated with living in a modern world. So I think you can, again, be intentional, right? Maybe don't just generate, cat videos endlessly, end on end, right? Maybe be intentional about the use of AI. But again, I think these are valid questions and valid concerns, and each organization really has to answer it for themselves.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's it's a lovely thing about the nonprofit sector that we think deeply about, the bigger ecosystem that we're in, and maybe root causes of some of the institutionalized challenges that we're struggling with, that our communities that we care about are struggling with. But I want to echo what you said, Matt. I heard recently in a webinar that voting for someone locally who will help regulate data centers would have much more impact than choosing not to use AI a couple of times a day. Like, it's just a different scale of impact in how much water it uses, the communities that it disrupts, all of those different aspects. So I would say that too. So I think we're almost at time.
Thank you both for this workshop, and thank you so much for participating. And again, thank you both for educating our community.
Great, thank you for having us. We really enjoyed it.